So if you've been thinking about swapping out your 4L60E for a 4L80E, let me tell you the parts I needed to do that on my 2003 Chevy Suburban, half-ton, two-wheel drive.
First thing you need is a transmission. So this is a 4L80E out of a 2001 Chevy Silverado 2500, and I found this on Marketplace. In my area, used transmissions seem to be about in the $900 range, and that's what I paid for this one. It may be cheaper around where you are, but that's about the running price on ones from Marketplace. Junkyards, when I looked up, they were, $1,400, and with 90-day warranties or whatever. Now, I did buy this one from a shop. It was like a swap shop is what they call themselves. They had square bodies in the parking lot. They had old cars. They looks like they were doing LS swaps and stuff like that. And I think they probably, my assumption is they bought a truck and pulled the 6.0 and 4L80 out and kept the 6.0. He said it was a working transmission, and he gave me a 30-day warranty in writing on a receipt from their shop. So that's why I went that way. There was another reason I picked this transmission. Most of the ones I had seen, looked clean, but you could tell they had been cleaned. This one was as dirty as it came out of the truck, and most of it looks like, engine oil from probably a rear main seal and valve covers leaking. I think this thing has not been rebuilt. He said it had 140,000 miles on it. I have no way to verify that. It may have 140. It may have 240. We have no idea. But it is supposedly a working transmission. He told me I could pull the pan on it, so we'll do that and make sure that it's not full of metal. If it's full of metal, we're not going to bother with even trying to put it in. So that was kind of a plus. A lot of these places, junkyards and stuff, they'll mark everything up where, with their little paint pens, and if you break that seal somewhere, like the pan, they won't warranty it. So you just kind of have to put it in there and hope it works. So, like I said, this came out of a 2001. Now, there are some differences through the years on the 4L80Es. I'm not going to get into all that. I will tell you why I chose this one and how I picked it. So, I think there's some differences in the neutral safety switch. My understanding is this is the same one that's on my 4L60E, at least the same plugs. I think the switch itself is the same as well. I think there's also some differences in the shifter bracket. This shifter bracket should work with my shift cable and everything. I did order one just in case, but it's not in yet, but I think this shifter bracket will work. There's some difference in the cooler lines on the different years, and some internal differences. I'm trying to think what else. But I wanted the latest I could get, and the way I kind of determined that is the ones that were behind an LS, so you could say, maybe 99 or 2000 up to whatever. They have this center bolt hole. The older ones that were behind a 350 or whatever, 454, are not going to have that center bolt hole. So that's what I looked for when I was looking on Marketplace. I looked for one with that bolt hole. I knew that was behind an LS and could potentially make my swap easier just because of things like the neutral safety switch. Like I said, it may be the same. I was reading conflicting information on it. This seemed like the better route to go because it's the same chassis era as my Suburban. You're gonna need a Crossmember. Now I've seen some people, they take and they cut up the stock Crossmember and kind of shift it back and re-weld it, or put a little extension on the back of it. Picked this up on Amazon. It was under $60. I feel like that was money well spent to be able to just swap it in and, you know, quick and easy. It seems to be pretty decent quality. The welds are better than I expected. There's a couple of welds that are a little skimpy, but I think it'll be fine. So the next thing, if you do not have a dipstick tube, I have one, but they bent it over, and so I tried to bend it back, but it looks like it's about to crack, so I stopped. So this is a dipstick tube out of like a 2001, you know, Silverado 2500. The dipstick tube on a 4L80E is different. So if you're getting it out of, you know, GMT800, 3/4 ton, 1 ton, whatever, then, you know, you can probably reuse that dipstick tube. I could have reused mine if they didn't. I think they bent it over to make sure nothing got down in it. I don't know, or they did it trying to pull it. I don't know, but whatever the reason was, it was bent over, and when I straightened it out, it looked like it was going to break. So this was $50 something. So, and I'll put a link in the description to all these parts. If you're buying one out of an express van or something like that, you know, you'll need a dipstick tube. This is the one that should get you what you need. As far as the dipstick, from what I read, the 1/2 ton and 3/4 ton dipsticks are the same. Now, I did get a dipstick with this. I got it, like I said, a bent over dipstick tube, but the dipstick is actually good. Now, what I read said 1/2 ton and 3/4 ton. Dipstick length is the same. Now, the two, my dipstick and the one that came with this transmission, are slightly different. The one that came with this transmission is about 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch maybe, shorter. This one's longer, 3/8 of an inch longer. So I don't know. I'm gonna look up the part number on that dipstick and see if maybe somebody at some point put a different dipstick in this. I don't know. As of right now, I'm just gonna leave that dipstick or that dipstick with this transmission, but I will verify the part number on it and cross it and see if that is the correct dipstick, or if I should use the one out of my 4L60E. Torque converter bolts. So on a 4L60E, you have 3 torque converter bolts. The 4L80E has 6 torque converter bolts. So you're either going to need to buy 3 bolts, or, you know, buy a set. I just bought a whole set. I think this was $30 or $30 something on Amazon. Now, the wiring. There's a lot of different ways to do this. So the actual connector between the 4L60E and the 4L80E is the same connector, but the pinout is slightly different. So you can repin your connector, but you're also going to need to run a wire for the speed sensor up to the ECM. I opted just to buy this from ICT Billet. It's made in USA. It's a good quality. It's, you know, basically a jumper harness that repins that connector for you, and then it also comes with the speed sensor wire. It's all nice and pretty, you know, so you in wire loom, so you can run that up to your ECM. I did this just because it's good quality. You can, if you don't want to, you can repin it, but you still have to run the speed sensor wire. You can buy these cheaper. This is about $120. You can buy, you know, made in China stuff that, you know, probably $40, and do that if you want. You can repin it and run your own wire. however you want to do it, but I wanted a good quality harness. I wanted to make this as quick and easy as possible. You know, I'm without my daily driver right now, so I opted to do this. It was the simplest solution. 120 bucks, around 120 bucks, and I'm done. You know, don't have to worry about it, in good quality, so shouldn't have to worry about that later down the road. I bought a new torque converter seal. Not necessary, but probably a good while you're in there. You know, might as well do it. This one didn't appear to be leaking, but yeah, cheap insurance. Here's a dipstick tube. I would probably replace this even if I wasn't replacing the dipstick. Just, you know, it's a common leak spot. Might as well throw a new one in. I think this is actually a GM one, part number right there. Like I said, I'll try to put a link in the description for all of these parts. This is the yoke I chose. Now, it's a long story on this yoke. I'll try to make it quick as possible. My transmission that I bought has a fixed yoke. It bolts onto the end of the transmission. It is not a slip yoke. That will not work on my Suburban because my Suburban has a one-piece drive shaft. If you have a two-piece drive shaft, then your 4L60E may have a fixed yoke as well, or maybe they didn't come with fixed yokes. But anyway, if you have a two-piece drive shaft that has the slip in the drive shaft itself, then you could use a fixed yoke. But if you're doing it on a truck with a two-piece drive shaft, since I needed a yoke, I ordered this one. I did a lot of research on this, and the reason I chose this one is it uses the same U-joints that my drive shaft uses. That keeps me from having to, you know, do a conversion joint. You know, it's different on each end because most 4L80E are going to be different, are going to be a larger U-joint. Most 4L80E or Turbo 400 yokes will have a larger U-joint than what the yoke on your 4L60E has. Now, what this is from a half-ton four-wheel drive, and the spline count on the transfer case on that is the same as the spline count on the output shaft of the 4L80E transmission. So this is actually a half-ton yoke, but it's got the same spline count as the 4L80E. It should, you know, slide right in there, and it allows us to use our same U-joint that, you know, is on our Suburban already. Now, I did buy a new U-joint just to have, so we're going to put a new U-joint in it. I'm going to put this in here real quick. If you do not have this shifter bracket, this is the one I said I ordered, but I don't need. I'm going to send this one back. This is the same shifter bracket that came on my transmission, 2001 Silverado 2500. This is the shifter bracket you need. So I will put a link to this one in the description. This is just an aftermarket one. This is not GM, but it is identical to the GM bracket. And last, you're gonna need a Flexplate. Now, unless you get a custom torque converter that has the 4L60E pattern, I know they do make those, you know, the 3-bolt pattern. But I'm using the stock torque converter, and so you need a Flexplate. And the difference in this, I'll pull my old one. Let me pull my old one real quick, and I'll show you the difference in them. Okay, this is our 4L60E Flexplate. And if you look, see how it's dished? And it only has 3 holes for the torque converter. Here's our 4L80E one. You can see it's not dished, but it's got a spacer on it. And it's got the 6 holes for the torque converter, So this is what you need to be able to bolt up to the torque converter on a 4L80E. This will bolt right up to our 5.3. And since this has a spacer, you do need longer bolts. And this ATP flywheel does come with Flexplate. ATP Flexplate does come with the longer bolts. That's why I chose this one. That way we didn't have to source bolts. If you take a look, the difference in them. Our original ones are shorter. And I like that these have a little bigger head too. So let me get y'all the part number on that. And that is a ATP. Again, all this will be in the description. There you go. So that is our parts. I guess I can show y'all the slip yoke. There's not much to see, I guess, really. It's a slip yoke, but there it is. And I'll let y'all know how this one works out as far as drive shaft length.
One other thing to note real quick is your transmission cooler lines are going to be too short. You can either extend your lines, the pressure and the return, both are going to be too short. So you can either extend those, or you can source lines from, a 3/4 ton version of your vehicle. So I extended mine, but I think I am going to circle back at some point and replace the lines. I have no idea if the 3/4 ton lines will fit my Suburban, but I am going to try it at some point. But for now, I just extended them.
All right, so here's all the parts that I bought. Now, some of these parts I did not cover in the parts needed because it may not be something you need. Like, I replaced my neutral safety switch just because mine was being a little finicky, and you probably wouldn't have that cost, but I included it just so you would have a full list of everything I bought for this swap. You can subtract out, if you don't think you need a neutral safety switch, just subtract that from the cost that I had, and there's your cost. But you may need some things different than I did. I guess I kind of got lucky with not needing to shorten my drive shaft. I had estimated this would cost about $1,500, but that was including the cost of shortening a drive shaft, or I was figuring that in. So I came out with what I estimated, but if I would have had to get it shortened, I would have been, quite a bit more than what I had estimated. So what I would recommend when you're picking out your 4L80E, before you go to pick it out, measure your 4L60E from the bell housing to the end of the transmission. Mine measured about 31.5, and this 4L80E was 31.5 as well. So that really helped us out with, not having to shorten the drive shaft. We just needed a different yoke. But I know that they had all kinds of different lengths, 4L60Es and 4L80Es. So just measure yours and measure the 4L80E that you're going to think about purchasing, and just try to get them the same length. If your 4L60E is less than 31.5, I don't think you're going to get a 4L80E less than 31.5, but who knows? I really don't know what all lengths they came in. So, to me, it was a worthwhile upgrade. $1,500's not too bad to end up with a much better transmission in your vehicle. Now, the other thing I did not cover in this is the tuning part of it. So, your ECM that is tuned for a 4L60E will not control the 4L80E without, changing it up. So there are some custom harnesses, I think, that can, basically make the 4L60E tune work with the 4L80E. I did not look into that. If you want to go that route,
do some research on that. But I already had HP tuners, and so I used HP tuners to basically, I took a stock 4L80E tune, transmission part of the tune, and put that on my ECM with HP tuners. And so now, ECM knows it has a 4L80 and is tuned for it. Quick and easy with HP tuners. I document that in the part 2 video of this swap. So if you're watching this, I actually had 2 videos on this swap. In the second part, I do cover what I did in HP tuners to tune the ECM for the 4L80E, if you're curious about that. Or if you're curious about the whole process, check out those 2 videos. It's about an hour each, just under an hour. I think they're about 50 minutes each. So they're quite long, but I tried to be detailed and document everything. So if you're curious more about that, you can check those out. But just keep in mind that, add that tuning cost or HP tuners cost to yours if you don't already have HP tuners. I don't know what it would cost to get somebody to tune it. HP tuners itself, I think, is about $400 plus the license cost. So that's quite pricey, to add on to this. But to me, it was worth it. I bought HP tuners when I tuned my E-fans, and, I've used it quite a few times since for various things. So I think it's worthwhile if you're going to have your vehicle for a while to go ahead and buy HP tuners and get familiar with it to be able to do things like this. And I'm not saying you're going to, do full tunes on it, but if you need to tweak certain things, you can. And I'm not a tuner, but I can play around with it and, do a few things if I want to. So I think it's worthwhile. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Like I said, check out those other videos if you want more details on this. I tried to limit this one just to the parts because I know not everybody wants to watch 2 hours of videos. They just want to know what they need to do it. Anyway, you got any comments on this, leave it down below. In the description, I'll leave links to all these parts. If you want to check them out, just verify that they are the correct parts for your vehicle before just buying them. Again, thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and subscribe for more.